get used to getting screwed by the Jewish media. And I'm saying, y'all done poked the bear too long.
I think Islam hates us. There's something there that there's a tremendous hatred there. There's a tremendous hatred. We have to get to the bottom of it.
Telling Jews to F off when they ask him to stop videotaping their children. It's incredibly concerning.
The city's
Death toll in Gaza from Israel's 14-day bombardment has topped 4,100 as Israel continues to block food, water, and...
Biden, you can't hide! We charge you with genocide!
Tonight, as the Israel-Hamas war continues to escalate, top U.S. agencies are sounding the alarm about hate here at home.
As the FBI has noted, we are seeing an increase in reported threats against faith communities, particularly Jewish, Muslim, and Arab communities and institutions.
We seem to be having another social justice awakening and are currently aware of genocide, displacement, and colonization in many different countries simultaneously. Sudan, the Congo, Haiti, Syria, and the list goes on. Unfortunately, many of us learned of the genocide in Sudan and Congo due to the heightened awareness after the attacks happening on the Gaza Strip and many other places in Palestine as a result of October 7th attacks conducted by Hamas, a political party of the Gaza. This happened in Israel, where over 240 hostages were taken, which at the time of this recording has resulted in 78 Israeli hostages being released, while approximately 18,600 Palestinian deaths, which includes more than 7,700 children and at least 81 Palestinian journalists, as well as about 50,500 injuries and thousands more missing. If Hamas is a terrorist group, it's a very nuanced conversation, but most of the killing is happening due to Israeli soldiers. So how the conclusion is that Hamas is simply a terrorist group makes no sense. But, you know, okay, Amy Schumer, or that's her name, right? I always confuse her and that other racist woman, and then there's that other racist white woman, so, you know, who the hell knows? Y'all will let me know in the comments if I got that right or not. My feelings are a mixed bag right now. As a black queer Muslim, I have many thoughts about the oppression of Palestinian people and a lot of the dirt being kicked up at this moment. Mainly my issue is due to our government and media propaganda, though rightfully enraged about the genocide currently happening in Palestine. A lot of folks' subconscious Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, like a sloppy track in a sewing, it's showing. I can see it. And you're doing a lot of the work of the ruling class. So I figured I'll jump into the group chat and, you know, say some things. This also is a time when I see many of my own intersections tug at me. I'm a black Muslim, so my awareness of how Muslim people of all races are treated in the world is highly visible to me. Then there's the anti-blackness that exists in the Arab world, which can't be skipped over. I have experienced firsthand throughout my life because I'm black, because my parents converted, and the list goes on. There's also anti-Semitic ideas that are being thrown around. There are Jewish people who are being extremely racist and anti-black in this moment. But similar to how I exist as a queer person who still wants the liberation of all black people, even the ones harmful to queer people, these are the same feelings I have for all oppressed Muslims of the world, of blackness and Islam intersecting. And there's so many anti-Semitic feelings and ideas that live there. There are black people with anti-Semitic sentiments and also lots of anti-blackness that gets thrown our way from people of the Jewish community. Yes, the Negroes be freely saying anti-Semitic stuff. That's why Kanye was able to say what he said that time and none of us were surprised. Like literally none of us. He just said it out loud in front of white people. I wanted to create this video because I wanted to discuss how our government and its propaganda have allowed Islamophobia and anti-Semitism to exist unchecked, and our lack of knowledge on how the United States isn't just a result of colonialism, but is still actively involved with the colonization of many countries in the world, and how that all coincides. It's due to the equally fueled Islamophobia and anti-Semitic beliefs whether you want to believe it or not, that have allowed Israel and all of the superpowers that have enabled their occupation to exist and to thrive the way that it has. I'm hoping by the end of this you can see how Islamophobic and anti-Semitic propaganda work together to contribute to the apartheid currently in Palestine. My name is Queen. Welcome to the Mixed Vixen channel. Hey boo, if you are new here, and if you are not new here, thanks for coming through again. I really appreciate you. I will not be going into the history of Palestine's forced occupation by Zionists to create Israel, and you should look for that information. But I don't think every specific detail is required if you generally understand the harm that is being caused and if you fully understand genocide and colonization. For this video, you don't need every specific thing to understand, but I will still offer these resources linked in the description box because knowing history never hurt anyone, and it is actually the ignorance of not knowing this history that keeps this stuff flowing. Okay, I can't do all the work, so that's the work for you to do. You gotta do something. So look at those videos and learn something. Before that, let's get into today's video sponsor. This video is sponsored by the Mixed Vixen Patreon fam. Become a patron for as low as $2 a month to help sustain this platform and get exclusive content monthly. Or if you don't want another subscription because shit, we got a lot of those, and still want to donate, hit me on a Cash App or Venmo. And of course, a big thank you in advance to everyone who will comment and give this video a thumbs up. You're a real one and I really fucks with you. I'm not sure if people see the connection between monolithic identities and genocide. My audience is majority black, and I know at one point all of the black people watching this video has said blackness is not monolithic, yet participates in monolithic ideas of people of other communities. You know how many times a black person has told me I don't look or act like a Muslim because of their ignorant monolithic ideas about Muslim women. There are monolithic ideas of people who practice Islam and Judaism that we are not challenging. The reason why we're not challenging them is because those people aren't black, which is also a lie, but I'll get into that later in the video. Our ideas of those people aren't blackness. Most of us think, why should we even examine that? We're going to start with how these monolithic identities of Muslim and Jewish people have been created by Western powers and how this fused the ideas many of us have about Israel's occupation of Palestine. Much of what we think of the people of these faiths has been influenced by media. Hollywood cinema has had a vital role in campaigning for the United States agenda. American Hollywood films have a dominant position in the film industry around the world. It could be concluded that there are two aspects that Hollywood cinema builds from this domination. First, the financial profit as a result of film distribution around the world. That's a given. Capitalism is going to capitalize. And second, this cultural influence in decimating American values to the rest of the world. According to Mundi Rahayu, in Hollywood, film's audience can understand friends and enemies through what the authorities of Foreign Affairs Office say and through what is said in Hollywood films. Film has been a device to protect U.S. foreign policy. When a particular nation is an enemy, they will be represented as a bad guy with all opposite American characteristics. On the contrary, allied countries will be represented as the good guy and friend. These political roles makes Hollywood become part of an American social political power and the global context. We've all seen a depiction of Muslim people in films and television as terrorists, jacking airplanes, or we've seen it in the media as a religion that loves to oppress women. As if Prophet Muhammad invented patriarchy or something. Peace be upon him. But, fun fact, he didn't. Similar tactics have been used in TV and film to flatten Jewish people into a monolithic identity as well. The assertion that Jews control Hollywood, the media, banking, and financing, amongst other things, is an anti-Semitic trope that dates back more than 70 years to an anti-Jewish campaign waged in the 1920s by Dearborn Independent, a long-defunct publication backed by the late industrialist Henry Ford. Yes, Ford Sr. The Dearborn Independent had mounted a 7-year anti-Semitic campaign based on the notorious and fraudulent book, The Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. It is also through media that other anti-Semitic tropes have been given to us. There's certain physical features that have been tied to Jewish people, stereotype that's greedy. There are other anti-Semitic tropes that actually predate what I just presented. Many of the physical features that have been stereotypically tied to Jewish people, the idea that they are greedy. This originated actually in the Middle Ages when the church forbade Christians to lend money while charging interest. Jews were legally restricted to occupations usually barred to Christians. Many went into money lending. This led to, through the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, the association of Jews with greedy practices when finances was basically a industry they was forced to work. There's also monolithic images we have of Jews and Muslims. The media we consume make the face of Islam a Middle Eastern person, an Arab person, or a South Asian looking person that will terrorize any non-Muslim and loves to oppress women. Nobody in this world cares about women, but we care about women when there's a Muslim in the room. There is also a way that media has forced Islam to be something racialized as the Arab, when not every Arab person is a Muslim and not every Muslim is an Arab. There are black, white, Asian Muslims. Islam is the second largest religion in the world, with Indonesia having the largest Muslim population in the world, Russia having the most significant European Muslim population. And there are about 13 countries in sub-Saharan Africa where the majority of the population is Muslim. That's a lot of non-Arab motherfuckers. Making Arab and Middle Eastern people the face of Islam does a few things. Since the media has already made Middle Eastern Muslims a terrorist, it allows many Americans to disconnect the humanity from this population of people. For genocide to happen, you must dehumanize a population. You have to make them villains. It also erases the many other races of people of the Islamic faith, making it appear to be a monolithic faith with only one race and only one sect. There are Muslims of many different races, as I said earlier, and many other sects. There are Sunni Muslims, Shia, Wahabi, Salafi, Baravi, Sufi, Diomandi. There's the Nation of Islam and people who interpret Islam in many different ways. It's not just one monolithic Islamic structure. Similarly, this has happened to the Jewish identity. The Jewish identity has been racialized, and most see Jewish people as a racial identity instead of a religious identity, which is harmful. The deception of the Jew as a race has allowed many Nazis and others who desire an Anglo-Saxon existence, allowing them to separate from the Jewish people of Europe, who are majority white, and justify the dehumanization of anyone of the Jewish faith. There are Jewish people of many races, so this erases their identities. There are Black Jews, Asian Jews, and even Arab Jews who are still persecuted in Israel. So this is not actually about religion. This is about land. For many of us, when we picture a Jewish person, we visualize white and white only, which isn't true. I will get into Black people and our relationship with anti-Semitism sometime later in the video, but I think it is essential to say here that all talking points about Jewish people echo white supremacy. Monolithic identities are harmful because the belief that certain groups have a single identity plays a vital role in genocidal ideology. Said the word genocide many times over, so I'll define it here. Genocide is an organized and deliberate attempt, often on the part of a state or groups of people, acting on behalf of a state to completely wipe out a group of people from the face of the earth. Genocide happens through a combination of factors: ethnic prejudice, racism, and other forms of hatred, fear of the other, extreme forms of nationalism, radical and absurd ideas of social change, myth-making, simply the idea of creating mythologies around a group, constructing a group as an embodiment of evil, and the desire on the part of the state to engage in extreme propaganda against the group that motivates large numbers of people to go out and destroy that particular group. All genocides are birthed by a monolithic identity imposed on a group the ruling class wants to get rid of. So that is why I had to make sure that we understand that we have to dismantle these monolithic ideas that we have of groups of people, because that is the birth, that is essential to results such as what we see happening currently in Palestine. So we're getting closer to how Islamophobia and anti-Semitism work together in the apartheid currently in Palestine. For this section, to get to the root of what's essential to examine is how this system exists and manifests in everyday discourse in our daily lives, and how they aid Zionistic goals and settler colonialism that has been happening in Palestine since the 1940s.
See if y'all know when I do this. Girl, we're going to Islam? Afghanistan? Where are we going, Afghanistan?
What is Islamophobia? It's an irrational fear or aversion to or discrimination against Islam or people who practice Islam. The term Islamophobia was first used in 1922 and was quickly disregarded, but became more popular in discourse in the 1990s. Atine Dinet, who first used the term, added that it was a dislike of Muslim people from a secular Western perspective. But from my experience, I would say from a Christian Western perspective. He was trying to be nice with his definition. He was trying to let you off the hook, but that's not me. I'm not letting y'all off the hook. Most people in the Western world know about Islam from what they learned from film and television and also news media. After 9/11, Muslims, people of Arab descent and South Asian descent became targets of government practices that resulted in racial profiling. At the same time, other races of Muslims were completely erased. I'll always bring up Malcolm X at this time because y'all love invoking that man. Y'all love using him for sound bites. Y'all love using him for all of that stuff. But y'all almost always erase the fact that that was a Muslim Black person. And also, one of the most influential people during the civil rights movement era during that time is a Black Muslim. But that is often erased. That is a huge act of Islamophobia that I don't think many people know that they are participating in. I do have some ways for you to kind of understand how Islamophobia exists in your day-to-day life. So the lack of knowledge about Islam and its teachings can lead to a misconception and fear. People form opinions based on stereotypes and misinformation. A lot of how people see Islam is through what they see on television or in films. Right now, there's currently this TikTok trend where there are folks who are reading Qurans and they're just so shocked that what they're reading in the Quran is vastly different from what they assume based on what they learn from media.
Someone cooked here.
Which is like, for me, wild, because Qurans are always free and you can always get one and they've always existed and you could have always read it. But now it's a TikTok trend and people are finally realizing that what they thought is not what actually was. It is these negative portrayals of Islam and Muslims from media that contribute to these stereotypes. They create a climate of fear. Media coverage that focuses on acts of terrorism by individuals who claim to be acting in the name of Islam can foster negative perceptions. You don't know how many times that there is a mass shooting or something, and I think to myself, I bet you that motherfucker's Christian, but they're not going to tie their faith to what the fuck they just did. But we do that to Muslim folks all the time. We have political leaders or people who influence our thought who engage in inflammatory rhetoric or use Islam as a scapegoat for societal problems. It's really just this lack of knowledge that creates this fear of the unknown or this fear of unfamiliar cultural practices, when you could just look into it, where you could just talk to a Muslim person, where you could just do some work to dismantle these ideas. Then there are historical events that have been so tied to Islam that people cannot separate them. Something like 9/11. That was a horrible thing that happened, but it was not an Islamic attack. That was not an attack done in the name of Islam. That was an attack done in the name of war. But when any one of the Islamic faiths does anything harmful, it is tied to the religion rather than just the person. They are not allowed to be an individual who commits a crime in the same way as white people.
Last weekend, there was a religious revival at Madison Square Garden. Bishop Fulton Sheen gave such a stirring address that afterwards 10,000 people converted to Catholicism. Then Billy Graham got up, and after an hour of inspired preaching, 10,000 people converted to Protestantism. Finally, to end the program, Pat Boone got up, saying there's a gold mine in the sky. And 20,000 Jews joined the Air Force. What's the matter, David? Don't the Jews have a sense of humor?
So let's define anti-Semitism, and that hostility toward or discrimination against Jews as a religious, ethnic, or racial group. Anti-Semitism was coined in 1881 by German publicist Wilhelm Marr. My German is horrible because I'm from the Bronx. Predating the Holocaust by more than 50 years. It was exclusively reserved for Jews. Marr's intention was to find a term that would explain more persuasively the need to exclude Jews from European secular society than the older, religiously based Jew hatred still popular at the time. He wanted to elevate Jewish hatred. Marr considered religious prejudice outdated and unscientific. He was like, we off that. Anti-Semitism came to describe Jews as a race. This change signaled exclusion on racial grounds, which eventually morphed into the lethal idea of Jews as a, this is a German word, Fremdkörper? It means foreign body. I can't say these German words. I speak about it. That would pollute the purity of the nation state. So Jewish people were racialized. Instead of the former religious-based hatred, it creates a different way in which people in Europe, which then bleeds into the United States, persecute Jewish people. Many understand religion as something that can be changed, something that's fluid. And even though it's not true, many do see race as a biological or genetic thing. So when Jewish people were racialized as a different race called the Semite, this pseudoscience set them aside as genetically inferior and then allowed for all Jewish stereotypes to be connected to Jewish blood and not simply just religion or culture, things that can merely be weeded out by assimilating to Christianity. So now that Jewish people or the Semite is a race and it's something genetic, it leads to these faulty eugenic practices that heavily influence Adolf Hitler's goal of a pure white race, which did not include Jewish people. I'm going to point out some things that are unique to anti-Semitism, although the things that I talked about for Islamophobia, some of them apply here as well. Jewish people have sometimes been scapegoated during economic hardships with baseless accusations that they control financial institutions or exploit economic systems. This usually happens when there's economic insecurity. So people will scapegoat Jewish people when this happens. And that's tied to the older Jewish stereotypes that since many Jewish people were forced into the banking and finance industry. You can pinpoint various times in history where places and political leaders have used anti-Semitism as a tool to deflect, blame societal problems, or to unite people against a common enemy. And then there's the blatant conspiracy theories that often target minority groups. Jews have been subjected to various unfounded conspiracy theories throughout history. These theories can exasperate an already existing prejudice. Eugenics became the forefront of many Jewish people's persecution and contributed to 11 million people being murdered during the Holocaust, with 6 million of these people being Jews. I've mentioned eugenics a few times to define it for you here. Eugenics is the study of how to arrange reproduction within a human population to increase the occurrence of heritable characteristics regarded as desirable. Developed largely by Sir Francis Galton as a method of improving the human race, eugenics was increasingly discredited as unscientific and racially biased during the 20th century, especially after the adoption of its doctrine by Nazis to justify their treatment of Jews, disabled people, and other minority groups. Eugenics is also something heavily used in the U.S. to purify and make a all-right race. Many forced sterilizations of black people, so on. Like eugenics is this whole ridiculous bag that I don't know why people are wild. A pronounced difference between Islamophobia and anti-Semitism was the pseudoscience that racialized Jewish people and was used to justify their genocide. In contrast, in Islamophobia, the racialization is more conducted through imagery of who is Muslim and the fear and hate of people who practice Islam. Generally tied to religious practices and appearances, Nothing genetic is inherently flawed about Muslim people. So those are some of the key differences between anti-Semitism and Islamophobia.
The Zionism is certainly not a liberation movement because it never fought against any imperialism. As a matter of fact, today, Zionism is the baby, child, and infant protector of imperialism in the Middle East. It carries out the interests of American imperialism. As a matter of fact, Zionism and American imperialism is like this. If our tax dollars would stop giving money to Israel, the state would sink tomorrow. And certainly no one can deny that American imperialism is the leading imperialist nation in the world. So we cannot see how a liberation movement is so tied, string and ham to American imperialism. They work hand in hand with American imperialism. Thus they can hardly be a liberation movement.
Let's get into Zionism because that's why we're here. Webster Dictionary defines Zionism as a international movement initially for the establishment of a Jewish national or religious community in Palestine, and later for the support of modern Israel. The definitions that we have for anti-Semitism and Zionism are two very different concepts, and it is essential to understand their meanings and implications. Zionism is its own beast. Zionism is a political and national movement, and it emerged in the late 19th century, advocating for establishing of a Jewish homeland and the historic land of Israel. The term Zion refers to the hill in Jerusalem, and this movement is to acquire that land that Palestinian people are on and have been on. A very key difference between Zionism and anti-Semitism is that Zionism is tied explicitly to the desire for a Jewish homeland in Israel, while anti-Semitism can happen anywhere in the world. You can be anywhere in the world and be anti-Semitic. Zionism is explicitly tied to Jewish people occupying Palestinian land, which they refer to as Israel. Zionism is related to the displacement of Palestinian people in the process of establishing a state of Israel. And I want to add, all Palestinians are not Muslim, all Palestinians are not Arab. Palestinians consist of many races and also many faiths. There are Black Palestinians, there are Christian Palestinians. I just want to emphasize that this is not about Muslim people versus Jewish people. Zionist movement wants everyone who is in that space who is not a white Jewish person to not be there. The expansion of Israel's settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem is a result of Zionistic politics and continues the tension that's in that region. The issue of settlements is a central point of contention in Israeli-Palestinian conflict that has led to the marginalization of anyone in that space who is not Jewish and also not white. Because like I said earlier, there are Arab Jewish people who are still persecuted based on Zionistic policies.
Our general point that Jews are not Zionists and Zionists are not Jews. The Zionist state does not represent Torah through Jews. It is against, its existence is against the Torah, against Jewish law.
I want to make clear that not all Jewish people identify or support Zionism. Some argue that Zionism doesn't represent the views of all Jewish people and that it has been used to justify the actions that are inconsistent with their values. These terms spell out why these things aren't the same. One is about the right to land exclusively for Jewish people, specifically Jewish people racialized as white. There is an intense amount of erasure of Black Jews, Hebrew Israelites, or Jewish people of other races, and discrimination against Christian people and Arab Jews in that region. The other is discrimination and hostility towards people of the Jewish faith, period. Nothing to do with land. It has to do with people, any and everybody of the Jewish faith. The current media discourse about these terms has become conflated, and that's not by accident. This conflation of the term is purposely happening because you can silence anyone who expresses Palestinian liberation by labeling them anti-Semitic. And this has serious repercussions. This is a deliberate way to keep people on the fence about this whole issue since the creation of Israel in 1948, and it's used to silence who advocate for the people of Palestine.
Does Biden think the anti-Israel protesters in this country are extremists?
What I can say is what we've been very clear about this. When it comes to anti-Semitism, there's no place. We have to make sure that we speak against it very loud and be very clear about that. Remember, what the president decided when the president decided to run for president is what he saw in Charlottesville in 2017, when he saw neo-Nazis marching down the streets of Charlottesville with vile anti-Semitic just hatred. And he was very clear then, and he's very clear now. He's taken actions against this over the past 2 years, and he's continued to be clear. There is no place for this type of vile and despite this kind of rhetoric.
Zionists also aren't all Jewish people. There are many Christian Zionists. Christian Zionist political roots reach as far back as the 1880s, when a man named William Heckler formed a committee of Christian Zionists to help move Russian Jewish refugees to Palestine after a series of pogroms. Another significant milestone in the history of Christian Zionism occurred in 1979, almost a century after William Heckler approached Herzl and offered to mobilize Christian support for a Jewish state. This was the founding of the Moral Majority, founded by Reverend Jerry Falwell. The Moral Majority was an organization made up of conservative Christian political action committees that succeeded in mobilizing like-minded individuals to register and vote for conservative candidates with nearly 6 million members. It became a powerful voting bloc during the 1980s and was credited for giving Ronald Reagan, yes, that fucker, the winning edge in the 1980s election. One of the Moral Majority's 4 founding principles was support for Israel and Jewish people everywhere. In 1980, Falwell, who ran a television ministry that reached millions of viewers, said of Israel, "I firmly believe God has blessed America because America has blessed the Jew. If this nation wants her fields to remain white with grain, her scientific achievements to remain notable, and her freedom to remain intact, America must continue to stand with Israel." Falwell disbanded Moral Majority in 1989, but conservative Christians have remained vocal supporters of Israel, though at this point they lack a strong formal structure for pro-Israel political action. And then if we look back in history, Christians have tried for centuries to get rid of Muslims and Jews. Just in general, it's their thing. There are anti-Semitic writings by Christian leaders dating as far back as the 3rd century. And in the 13th century, Islam was deemed unholy during the Crusades. This propaganda of people of Islamic and Jewish faith goes way back. It even predates the concept of whiteness. One of my issues with many people after the Hamas attacks in Israel was people who clearly understood colonialism, genocide, and apartheid still stated they needed more information. What more information did you need to confirm genocide is wrong? Immediately brought up the Islamophobia I've experienced from lots of Black people. How can a subject matter that has consistently been happening since the 1940s still be so secondary to so many people? Like, niggers have been saying peace in the Middle East in hip-hop since the 90s. Yet many are still fine with being ignorant about an oppression that they think doesn't affect them directly. Also because there's a fear of being perceived as anti-Semitic simply because you speak up for Palestinian lives. I was watching Oloronati's video, Why Americans Don't Support Palestine. Great video, by the way. I have it linked in the description below. But it helped me kind of articulate my beef with the expert opinion. The concept of an expert in general constantly loses me. Like, many of us in this work insist on being an expert on everything before expressing something like genocide is wrong. And that fails the people of that population being harmed. Do you have to be a scientific expert to voice pro-reproductive rights? Did you have to be an expert in childhood education to know that book bans in schools are wrong? Do you have to be an expert in women's politics to know that patriarchy is a bitch? We slow down the road to liberation by having these self-absorbed ideas of having to be an expert on every topic when we simply can tap into our humanity and publicly just say something is wrong. A lot of people are full of themselves. If they can't charge into a room all knowing, they don't want to do it. They will instead do nothing. And that's wild to me. Like, wild. All that is needed to spread awareness is that more eyes are on a particular subject matter. And if you are a thought leader in your community and you only feel confident when you can lead the charge and not when you can be an auxiliary arm, you have work to do, my friend. Because everything is not going to be about you. You're not going to be the one who knows everything, and that is okay. Y'all be saying that ally word all the time. That's how you do it. You don't got to be the expert. Give someone else the stage. Further analysis is always necessary, but how many of us just comment, I don't know enough about that subject matter, and then never do anything and never do anything to know more, especially when it's an identity that isn't your own or that doesn't directly affect you. Pieces of me were highly offended every time I heard that. And believe me, I heard it a lot from intelligent people too. I knew it was the fear of being labeled anti-Semitic that fueled this, but it was still very frustrating for me. White supremacy, like dead ass, got y'all looking like fools. Like the ruling class just be ruling. I couldn't do this video without talking about Black people and our relationship to anti-Semitism. I do not believe Black people are anti-Semitic. I say that because we don't have the power and mass to harm people of the Jewish faith. But we definitely participate in anti-Semitic ideas, anti-Semitic sentiment, and spread that hate. We definitely participate in that way. So I think it's important to talk about that. There's a long history of Black people participating in very misdirected anti-Semitic ideas. Also, being Islamophobic. And it's really simply because Christianity is a dominant religion in this country. And most of what this country was built on is based on a Protestant Christian philosophy. I'm grateful myself to have unlearned many harmful anti-Semitic ideas that uphold white supremacist Christian ideals. And I had to grow to separate that dangerous rhetoric from what I now understand as a subtopic of white supremacy. This apartheid occupation of Palestine isn't a war of religion like many of us have been led to believe. It's simply colonial rule and ethnic cleansing that the superpowers of the world want to happen by any means necessary. Anti-Semitism among Black Americans is a complex issue that has been present for many years. Some Black leaders have made public anti-Semitic comments, and some Black Americans hold anti-Semitic beliefs, including accusing Jewish people of being over-aggressive in their business relationships with Black people, being more loyal to Israel than the United States, participating in the slave trade, and economically oppressing Black people. However, I think it is essential to note that not all Black Americans hold anti-Semitic beliefs, and anti-Semitism is not unique to Black people. James Baldwin wrote in this wonderful essay, it's an archived essay in the New York Times that he wrote. I will have it linked if you want to read it yourself. But in this essay, he argues that African American sentiment of Jewish people reflects generalized anti-white sentiments. So all of those things that I listed that Black people have tied to anti-Semitic ideas is generally beef that we have with white supremacy. Baldwin states that the heightened level of anti-Semitic attitudes within the African American community can be explained by their generalized anti-white sentiment. Also, African Americans' resentment of Jewish people results from the perception that Jewish people benefit from whiteness while exploring poor Black people. Baldwin argues that African Americans express this feeling of betrayal in the form of anti-white sentiment, which he claims is mistaken for a particular prejudice towards Jews or, anti-Semitism. Black people are not more anti-Semitic than any other race. And I want to echo again that it's generally our beef with white supremacy. And because of the racialization of Jewish people as white, it has become that. A recent study by the sociologist Ethan Hirsch of Tufts University and Laura Roden of Harvard reveals that Black and Latinx young adults report anti-Semitic views at rates similar to young white adults who self-identify as alt-right. The study suggests that Black anti-Semitism is not simply a response to Jewish behavior, but is also influenced by other factors, including anti-white sentiment and a perception that Jews benefit from whiteness. So the root of most Black anti-Semitic ideas is a reaction to the privilege afforded white Jewish people. These privileges are given to them because they are white, not because they are Jewish, which is a crucial distinction to make because these sentiments aren't fact. Solidarity between Black Americans and Palestinians has indeed existed and continues to be a topic of interest and activism for some individuals and groups. I spoke about my disappointment with many Black people's silence. I explicitly addressed Black people who generally talk about oppression, not the ones who just, post their dogs and, shit like that. Not those people. Still, I do want to note that regardless of my disappointment, more were vocal than not. And there were so many who used this moment to learn out loud, to share resources they came across, express boycotts and divestment initiatives, and make their followers aware of how all these oppressions were connected. Some made simple efforts like letting folks know where they stand and affirm that they don't fuck with genocide of any kind. And I wanted just to make sure that I recognized that and I didn't act like that didn't happen, because it did. Those efforts of solidarity were great to see online and also to see in the streets. It's great to see us mobilizing for all forms of liberation. So much work has been done and it was so amazing to see. The solidarity often stems from a shared experience of oppression, social justice concerns, and a desire to support causes related to racial, ethnic, and social justice. However, it is essential to note that not all Black Americans or Palestinians necessarily share the same views or engage in this form of solidarity. The solidarity between Black people and Palestinians is very easy for me to connect, probably because of my layered existence as a Black Muslim, but that isn't so apparent and evident for others.
I'm focused on Black people's problems. Ain't nobody helping us. You got 27 million Africans in the Congo, displaced, environmental issues, hunger, poor health care. You got 1 million Ethiopians who've been murdered. You got Sudanese who have died. Ain't nobody said nothing about the Sudanese. Ain't nobody said nothing about the Ethiopians. Ain't nobody said nothing about the Congolese. But you want me to cry tears for the Arabs? Listen, I hope the Arabs in the West Bank in Gaza, I hope they get all they get. I hope they are protected. I hope nobody dies. I hope those babies' lives are safe. I hope the women are cared for. I hope that there's no bloodshed, no violence. But if you think I'm going to take time out of struggling for African people, if you think I'm going to stop my agenda to liberate my people to go cry for people who don't cry for me, if you think I'm going to stop what I'm doing and pay attention to what's going on over there when y'all don't even pay attention to what's going on in Africa. Y'all don't pay attention to what's going on in Ethiopia. Y'all don't pay attention to what's going on in the Congo. The greatest humanitarian crisis in the world is in the Congo, not the West Bank. I said the greatest humanitarian crisis in the world is in the Congo, not the West Bank, not the Gaza Strip, not Israel, but in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So don't tell me I got to cry for whites and browns. I'm crying for Black people, and I don't care who don't like it. I don't care who don't like it.
I don't follow Dr. Umar's work. He reminds me of a broken clock because you saw that. He's missing a lot of information, but one of my questions to him and people who are into his work is, what has he done in solidarity even with the Congo? Like, please, let me know. Let me know in the comments. I could be ignorant to that. He does not seem to understand that all oppressions are connected. Even if I only care about Black people diasporically, the policing tactics, the surveillance tactics, the security tactics of all of these systems of the world are working together to oppress us. They're all doing this together to oppress us. The same things that are oppressing the people in the Congo are oppressing the people in Palestine, are oppressing the people in Haiti, are oppressing the people of Sudan, are oppressing the people right here in the United States. It is effortless for me to realize that advocating for one group doesn't detract from my support of others.
Palestinian activists have long supported Black people's struggle against racism. When I was in jail, solidarity coming coming from Palestine was a major source of courage for me. In Ferguson, Palestinians were the first to express international solidarity. There has been this very important connection between the two struggles for many decades.
In the occupied West Bank, protesters denounced Floyd's murder and the recent killing of Iyad el-Halak, a 32-year-old Palestinian special needs student who was shot to death by Israeli forces in occupied East Jerusalem. He was reportedly chanting Black Lives Matter and Palestinian Lives Matter when Israeli police gunned him down, claiming he was armed.
And then there are some Black people who are afraid to do it publicly because of the conspiracy that Jewish people rule the world and the conflation of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. Many people have lost their jobs and had other strikes at their livelihood taken from them for speaking out against the occupation of Palestine. I'm actually looking for a job right now, and who knows if this video somehow will affect that? I don't know. Join my Patreon. Thanks in advance. As an independent creator, I've seen so many colleagues afraid to critique Zionistic ideals because any pro-Palestine sentiment spoken publicly in almost any capacity can be career suicide. What happens when Black leaders using traditional mainstream avenues lose their positioning in speaking about Palestine? Mark Lamont Hill lost his job on CNN for advocating Palestinian lives. Now his voice has been minimized to less mainstream avenues. I do not care to be part of any mainstream avenues of media consumption. I'm not trying to be famous. I'm trying to be free. And I don't ever want to be institutionalized by traditional systems of academia or media due to the expectation of always being loyal to that institution. You really can't offer full solidarity to anyone when you are institutionalized. So I make a conscious decision not to be. In the intricate tapestry of global human rights struggle, the shared experience of oppression and discrimination endured by Black Americans and Palestinians have forged a profound bond of solidarity. This alliance is not merely a recognition of historical injustices, but a commitment to universal human rights principles, asserting that protecting these rights is imperative, irrespective of race, ethnicity, or nationality. In the vast landscape of global struggles, the connection between Black people and Palestinians goes beyond just facing. It's about having each other's backs. This alliance isn't just acknowledging past injustices. It's about standing up for basic human rights, no matter where you come from. When our communities join forces, it's like turning up the volume on our message. They can reach more people and make more significant impact. For example, the spotlight on what's happening in Palestine has shown a light on the genocides in the Congo and in Sudan. Now, this can also lead to another critical conversation about the privilege specific communities have to reach mainstream spaces, because there's obviously colorism and anti-Blackness at play here. You know, y'all get my point. But it's not just about making noise. Coming together lets people learn from each other. We share our stories, our cultures, and our experiences. This helps us understand each other better and see things from a different angle. This strength in numbers. By teaming up, our communities can support each other through thick and thin. It's not just about dealing with the struggles at hand. It's about building a foundation for long-lasting change. The struggles of Black people and Palestinians aren't isolated. They connect with a bunch of other issues like economic inequality, immigration, and indigenous rights. This solidarity gets that these problems are all tangled up together, and to solve them, we need to look at the big picture. Think globally. This isn't just about two communities. This is a part of a bigger movement for fairness and equity. Black people and Palestinians standing together is like a ripple effect, making waves for a more equitable world. And here's the cool part: by teaming up, there's a chance for peace. It's not just talk either. By teaming up, Black Americans and Palestinians can make politicians sit up and take notice. They can shake up the rules and make real changes and fix racial inequalities and human rights problems. Basically, this camaraderie between Black people and Palestinians isn't just about saying, hey, we're in this together. It's about turning up the volume of our message, learning from each other, having each other's backs, being a part of a big push for a fairer and equitable world for everybody.
Two issues of our time, really, that I think amount to a litmus test for morality as far as I'm concerned. One is what you're prepared to do on behalf of the Palestinian people, and the other is what are you prepared to do on behalf of gay and lesbian peoples. I really feel that those two things are like co-equal fundaments in my worldview at this time.
I got a lot out today, but one thing that I'm realizing as I get to the closes is I kind of hate that I'm in a space where I have to talk about Judaism and anti-Semitism at all. One, because it's just like, why does it exist? But another, because Palestinians didn't pick the identity of their occupiers. I wish the media propaganda selectively shifted the narrative away from white Jewish fear towards the 75-year struggle for Palestinian liberation. And I'm hoping that this video did some of that today. Making folks aware of the injustices happening in Palestine does not make me anti-Semitic, and we can't continue to allow the ruling class to scare us into believing that that is true. Further examine our relationship to anti-Semitism. That eliminates a tool in their toolkit of oppression. It is white supremacy and the privilege of whiteness that is the issue here. Please get your Islamophobia in check. Like, no matter what, you participate in a system of Islamophobia. Any country where Islam is not a majority religion has Islamophobia embedded in it. Part of colonialism is demonizing the faith system of the nations they conquer. So by default, the foundational building blocks of this country, the United States, that's where I'm at, unfortunately, has Islamophobia in it. The silence due to the fear of being labeled anti-Semitic and not fully understanding how you are a participant in Islamophobia has aided the subjugation, colonization, and genocide in Palestine. Do more to dismantle your monolithic ideas about Muslim and Jewish people. It is solidarity amongst all oppressed people that will overturn white supremacist imperialist systems. And it is our division that continues to do the work of those in power. And that's late. Let's get that shit out of here. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. If you are here, you have reached the end of the video. And thank you for taking this ride with me. If you are here in the comments, please put to the river to the sea to show solidarity with the people of Palestine. I'll close this the way I always close this. Thank you to all of my patrons. I appreciate you. You are enough. You are a bad bitch. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.